channel. So in today's session we'll discuss about one more concept in Matplotlib library, that is a legend function. So this legend function is used to describe the functionality of a line if you plot the multiple lines in a graph. So for example, if you draw multiple lines in a graph, so let it be, this is a graph, okay, this is a graph. So you are having some lines with this one and this one. So we are having two lines in this graph. Let us take the example, right? So if you have plotted these two lines in a graph, so we don't know by observing this graph, so what is the functionality of this line and what is the functionality of this line. So in order to describe the functionality of line, if there is a multiple lines, then this legend function is used to describe. So it will create a box with the functionality of these two lines. So it will give the functionality, the colors. So the color of the lines will be different if you plot two lines, right? So the color of the line will be displayed, and here we'll get some functionality. So that means, so by watching this legend box, we can know that this line is a functionality of that particular thing, and this line is for a functionality of the particular thing. For example, if you have plotted two lines, one is with x square and another one is x cube. So y is equal to x square and x cube, and x will be with the values of 1, 2, 3, 4 and 5. So if you plot x comma y1, so it will give the squares. Okay, the plot will be of squares. And if you draw x comma y2, so it will give the cubes. So without this legend, we can't know which line represents the squares and which line represents the cubes. So in order to get that, we need to use the legend. Okay, so we need to use the legend. So for that purpose, we can implement this one by using two methods. One is legend, that means without parameters. So without parameters. And here we can implement the same legend function by using different parameters. So first let us see this legend without parameters. So if you want to use this without parameter, then we have to add the label parameter in the plot function. So inside the plot function, if you observe here, so if you are plotting this one, plot x comma y1, and here you use another parameter called label, and give here squares. So automatically if you execute this one, the label will be given for the squares. That means whatever the color given for this plot, for that color the label will be squares. And similarly, if you want to use another plot, okay, if you want to go with x comma y2, and again you can use the label is equal to cubes. So here we need to add one more parameter in the plot function called label, which gives the name for the particular line, right? And in this case, if you are using the label inside the plot function, no need to give the parameters inside the legend in order to display the labels, right? So simply you can go with the legend function. So without calling this legend function, even though you are writing the label, that will not be displayed on the plot. Okay, so here I have to use a plt.plot, similarly plt.legend. So even though you are using the label inside the plot function, you have to use the legend function call. So compulsory you need to call this legend function. Unless you call this legend function, this legend box will not be displayed, right? So only one thing is, here we are not writing any labels. Okay, here we are not writing any labels or parameters inside the legend function. This is the one thing. And coming to these parameters, if you want to represent the parameters, then there are a lot of parameters to use this legend function, right? See, for example, I will tell you the parameters, right? So the parameters are, the first one is a location. LOC is equal to LOC is equal to means location where to display the legend box. So here the values you can give either a string or numerics. The numerics will be from 0 to 10. So each number will represent one position, right? Like if you want to display like this, it is nothing but upper left. Okay, there is space between upper and left. And similarly, if you want to display on the right side, you have to display upper right. Okay, if you want to display the lower, you have to write it as lower left. Similarly, lower right. Similarly, center. Similarly, lower center. Okay, similarly upper center. So like this there are different values, okay, different values. So you can represent in the form of a string, or the same thing is given with a numerical values from 0 to 10. So we can use any one number in between 0 to 10 to display the legend box in the plot. So I will execute the program and I will show you about all these options, right? So this is one first parameters, that is a location. The next one is frame alpha. So if you are representing the box in this way, the legend box, so one color with the squares and another color with the cubes. Then frame alpha means the frame, outside frame. So this will be the integer value or a float value in between 0 to 1, so which gives the transparency of this particular box, So if the frame alpha is equal to 0, so the frame will not be displayed. Okay, complete transparency, frame will not be displayed. If you give it as 1, then the frame will be displayed. So in between 0 and 1, if you can give any float value, for example 0.5, so up to that transparency will be applied for the box. This is the second one. Okay, these are all the optional. You can include or you may not include. Okay, and the third one, face color. Face color means inside the box. So whatever the space, whatever the area inside the box, that is called a face color. So this face color can also be represented with the help of a color name or hexadecimal format. So you can directly give the color red. So automatically the complete box will be filled with the red color. Otherwise, you have to use a hash and the hexadecimal format. The first 2 bits represents the red, the next 2 bits represents the green, and next 2 bits represents the blue. So the combination of red, green and blue. So I will give some 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. So these 2 represents the red color, the combination, the combination of red, green and blue. Okay, the shade of red, and the next 2 represent the shade of green, and then next 2 represent the shade of blue. So the combination of these 3 things will give a color for the face, and that is the next one. And the next one is the edge color. So here edge color is nothing but our border color, the frame color. Okay, so here also we can give the border color, so directly by using the name or by using the hexadecimal format. So any value, if you want to represent any color, then we can directly use a name or hexadecimal format, right? And the next one is a shadow. So shadow parameter will give a small shadow for this box. So this is a boolean, so it may be either true or false. If it is a true, the shadow will be appeared. If it is false, the shadow will not be appeared. And the next one is fancy box. The fancy box is nothing but in order to represent the box in either the rectangle or a rounded rectangle. Okay, so this is also either true or false. So it may be the rounded rectangle, the edges you can observe in the execution. It may be the rounded rectangle or simple rectangle. So that can be differentiated with the help of this fancy box option, the fancy box option, right? So these are the different parameters we can use to represent the legend in the plot. So directly we can give all these parameters in the legend function, like the plot pyplot dot legend of user location is equal to, similarly frame alpha is equal to, similarly phase color is equal to, edge color is equal to. So we can use all these parameters here. So that is called by implementing. So apart from this, we are also having the label. So here also we can give the label inside the legend. Okay, apart from all these things. So if you are not able to give the label in the plot, you have to use the label parameter inside the legend. See, in order to represent the two lines, you can use it as legend label is equal to, use the list of strings to represent the multiple lines, giving the color for multiple lines, or label for multiple lines. So here if you are having two plots, you can give it as squares. So I am using list of strings, comma, cubes. So I am giving some list of strings. So this is the list of strings. Automatically this will be implemented for the first line and this will be implemented for the second line. Okay. So apart from this label, you can also use the location, frame color, frame alpha, okay, and face color, edge color, shadow, right? So fancy box. So all these parameters can be used in the legend function. So don't worry if you are still having any doubts. I will execute the same thing, all the options. I will show all the options by drawing some a plot with the multiple lines in the system, right? So let's move on to the interpreter.
Yes, hello friends. So just now we have seen the syntax for legend function in Matplotlib. So this legend function is used to describe the elements of a graph. So for example, if you are drawing multiple lines in a graph, so in order to represent the functionality of each and every line, we can represent that by using the legend function. So the legend can be implemented in two ways. One is without parameters and one is with parameters. So we'll see both the cases. First, let us import the pyplot module from the Matplotlib library. So from Matplotlib, import pyplot, and I am giving some alias name so that all the functions should be called with the help of alias name, right? So I am also importing some numpy taking the values for x coordinate. So numpy as np. So I am taking x coordinates as np dot arange function to reading the values from 0 to 5 with 1. Okay, interval of 1, and y1 coordinates I will take the squares of x, and y2 coordinates will be the cubes of x, right? And now let us plot the function. So plt dot plot. So just give x comma y1 comma x comma y2. So this is just plotting multiple lines. Okay, multiple lines. So you can observe here there will be two lines. So you can observe two lines. So one is with the squares, so another one is with the cubes, right? So if you observe the graph without the code, you don't know which line represents which functionality. That means which line represents the squares and which line represents the cubes. So for this purpose, we will going with the legend function. So plt dot legend, and give the values, the multiple lines. So here you are using some multiple lines. You can give the names for those functionalities in the form of a list of strings. Pass the list of strings. So first string is the first plot, x comma y1. So this is the first plot, no? So y1 is a square, so I will give here it as a squares, right? And the second string represents the next line, so cubes. You can observe if you execute, we'll get a legend box, a square box, a rectangle box, implementing the functionality of those two lines. Not only the two lines, if you go with the three lines, you can go with the three list of strings. So this is the parameters, and apart from these labels we are having a lot of parameters available for the legend. And another way to implement this one is, so just use the label function, label parameter in the plot function, which can describe the legend, right? See, x comma y1, and use the label is equal to squares. So it gives this label for the for that particular plot. So I will go with one more thing, x comma y2, and also give the label is equal to cubes, right? And here you need not give the parameters for this one, sorry. So let us keep this one, and I will just keep all these two cases in the comments. Now you can observe, so without the legend function, the label will not be applied. So you can observe, I have not given any legend function here. So I have kept these two lines in a comment. So if I execute, you are unable to find the legend box. So if you give this legend function, so this is without parameters, right? So without parameters, so automatically the label of the particular plots will be detected from the plot function itself. So x comma y1 plot with a label squares, and x comma y2 plot with label cubes. So this will be automatically detected if you are not giving any parameters. And if you want to give any parameters, there are more parameters. We can give a lot of parameters, that is where we can display this legend, right? So on the graph where we can display. So for that purpose we have to use the location parameter, LOC is equal to, so there are numberings from 0 to 10, which gives different places where we can represent that one, or otherwise we can represent on a string. For example, so you can observe upper right, if you want to display it on upper right. So give upper right, so automatically it will be displayed on the right side, upper right side. Otherwise, simply you can go with the numerical code for upper right, that is 1. Sorry, 1 is a numerical, so we should not enclose in this one. So if you go with the 1, automatically we will get the legend box appeared on the upper right. If you want to go with upper left, you can have to write it as upper left, or you simply give the 2. Simply give the 2 so that the label will be displayed on the upper left. And if you want to give it the center right, you can go with the 5. So it will be displayed on the center right, or you can also give it as a center right. So center right. So that will also display the same legend on the center right. So like this we can give the upper right, upper left, lower right, center left, center right, lower center, upper center, and the center. Right. So the number we can also represent the same thing in a numerical format, that is from 0 to 10. And just will display on the upper center, okay, on the upper center, or we can display on upper left, okay, so that it doesn't disturb the graph, right? So here there is a lot of space, so we can display it here. And this is a one parameter to display to specify where to display the legend. And the second one is a frame alpha. So frame alpha is to give the transparency of this box, legend box. So if you execute here, see, you can observe here, if it is 0, you can observe there is no outline for this legend. And if you give 1 here, you can observe the outline. That's called a frame alpha. And the next one is a face color. So we can also specify the color of the legend box. So you can represent in a name or hexadecimal format. I will represent with a name. Okay. So you can observe the yellow box. Okay. Face color is a yellow. And also you can give the edge color. There is one more parameter called edge color. So edge color I will give it as a black, so that the edge, the line color will be black. You can observe face color is yellow and the edge color is black. And also you can use a fancy box. So you can observe the fancy box means the box representation is a rounded rectangle. So in order to change that, we can use the fancy box. So fancy box is equal to false. If you give a fancy box is equal to false, we'll get a normal rectangle. The representation will be normal rectangle. Just observe the difference, a slight difference will be there. And if you give this fancy box as a true, you can get it as a rounded rectangle. So edges will be rounded rectangle, right? And also there is one more parameter called shadow. So you can apply the shadow also. That is also Boolean. So if you observe it, if you give it as a true, a slight shadow will be appeared for this box. and you can observe a slight difference will be there. If you go with the false, see there is no shadow. Okay, so slight difference, just observe that thing. So shadow will be there. And the last one is the font size. So you can also give the font size. So you can specify the size. For example, if it is a 15, the font size will be 15, so it was increased, right? So if you want to give some 5, it will be reduced, right? So like this we can also change the font size, right? So this is how we can implement the legend function. So one thing we can implement by using without parameters and with the parameters. So if you use a without parameters, you can use a label parameter inside the plot function. If you want to use the parameters, you need to give the labels in the form of list of strings. That's very important, right? So this is how we can represent the legend. So legend is used to describe the functionality of each and every line of a graph, right? So if you are having any doubts regarding this legend function, feel free to post your doubts in the comment section. Definitely I will try to clarify all your doubts. And if you really enjoyed my session, like my session, share my session with your friends, and don't forget to subscribe to our channel. Thanks for watching. Thank you very much.